Western media tries to make this look like this was some sophisticated intelligence operation. No, it's not. You want to kill. If it's a targeted assassination, that means you kill that one person and no one else is hurt. But if you slaughter everyone in a building, that's not a targeted assassination, no matter what the BBC or CNN or Fox News or the New York Times or Breitbart or The Guardian pretend, whatever, regardless of what they say, they're just saying it for the sake of glorifying the Israeli regime and to hide and to whitewash the regime for what it's doing in Gaza. That's it, basically.
Hi, and welcome back to Deep Focus. I'm John Kiriakou. I feel like I have whiplash this week because of the events taking place in Iran, between Iran, the United States, and Israel. On one day, the Israelis are bombing Iran. On the next day, Iran is bombing Israel. Then the United States jumps in and bombs Israel, or rather bombs Iran. So you see, I get confused. I can't keep it straight. The fact of the matter is, though, there seems to be a ceasefire that's holding. This issue is far more confusing and far more complicated than it seems. So we're going to talk about it with our go-to expert, that is Dr. Mohammad Marandi. We're always honored to have Dr. Marandi with us. He's a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran, and he is a frequent commentator on political and social developments for a wide variety of international news outlets. Mohammad, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that I'm not making too much work for you in your spare time. What little spare time you have.
No, thank you very much for inviting me, John. It's always a pleasure being on your show, and I admire your work.
Thank you so much. I have to ask you, I follow these issues closely, like so many of us do, and I just can't understand what I just saw. We had the Israelis attacking Iran. The Iranians, of course, had to retaliate. And so we see losses on both sides. We see direct hits on both sides. And then after decades of American presidents saying that they're not going to bomb Iran on behalf of the Israelis, this president bombs Iran on behalf of the Israelis. And then, like magic, announces that there's a ceasefire, uses the F word to criticize both Iran and Israel, and the ceasefire appears to be holding. Mohammed, can you explain to us in plain English what in the world it was that we just saw?
First, we have to go back a bit and go to the nuclear negotiations that we had with the Americans. Witkoff initially was reasonable. And he gave an interview on Fox News, I think, and said, yes, we're going to agree on something where the Iranians enrich uranium at 3.67%, and which would be for electricity.
Okay.
And that is also, I think, more or less acceptable for Iran for the time being, for the next few years at least, because Iran also produces medical isotopes at the Tehran experimental reactor, which uses enriched uranium at 20%. But in order to create confidence, decrease tensions, the Iranians would be willing, I think, would have been willing to do that, to make such an agreement. Then we saw Witkoff suddenly shift and change. Netanyahu comes in, the Zionist lobby comes in, the neocons come in, and Witkoff and Trump take a different course and say, no enrichment. Now, the Iranians would never accept that because that is a sovereign right. And so no sane country is going to give up its sovereignty. Iran went through an 8-year-long war with Saddam Hussein when he tried to invade the country and take bits and pieces of our land. So Iran is not going to give in to the United States when it tries to take away bits and pieces of Iran's sovereignty. So, but the negotiations continued. But what happened was that the United States under Trump and Netanyahu were conspiring against Iran behind the scenes, and that they were preparing for war. And we saw the night before the Israeli blitzkrieg, Trump said, I'm against an attack. But the day after, he was gloating and he was basically admitting that he was in on this. So it was clear that either the negotiations from day one were just a facade, or from, I guess, week 3, when you saw the sudden shift in U.S. policy. After that, it was a facade. Some could say it was a facade since years before, because apparently the planning for this attack began many years ago. So you can interpret and so you can interpret it in many different ways simultaneously. But what it does show is that the United States is deceptive, and that Trump is deceitful, and this in the future is going to make any negotiations literally impossible.
Well, let me ask you about that, because now we're seeing reports that the negotiations actually are back on. There was a statement from the Omani foreign minister saying that the two sides had agreed to meet again. Is that at a low level of negotiator? Is it technical talks? What should we expect to see, let's say, in the coming week or two? Do you think there will be talks?
Well, I don't know when you're going to broadcast this, but it is Thursday night, Tehran time, 11 p.m., 11:08 right now. The foreign minister literally minutes ago was on the Channel 6 in Iran, which is the news channel, and he gave a long interview with a well-known host. And he said that until now, we have not even discussed negotiations with anyone. Okay. And he also said that because the host was saying, well, Trump said this, and he said, look, Trump every day, he says 10 different things. So, don't take anything seriously. But it doesn't mean there won't ever be negotiations. But the point is that even if there are negotiations, with this sort of behavior that comes from Washington, and support for war and murder and death and destruction, and then U.S. direct involvement in this war, I don't see how we can get to any deal with Trump anytime soon, or if at all. We'll have to see. But the point is, though, that when the war started, the Israelis carried out a blitzkrieg attack, and the Western media tried to portray the Israelis as very sophisticated and smart, whereas what they did was they just slaughtered people. So they would attack buildings where they knew a general was living, which is no secret. If you ask in our neighborhood where I live, people who know me, they'll say, well, that's his house. It's not, it's not rocket science, figuring this sort of thing out. So what they would do is they'd destroy, in some cases, they destroyed the whole building to kill one person. They did so 3 days ago in a small city. They wanted to murder a nuclear scientist. He was staying with his father and his family, and the extended family was there, and they wiped out most of the whole extended family to kill one person. Or in Tehran on the first night, in order to kill 2 senior officers who were living in the same building, they brought down the entire apartment complex, killing everyone inside, including over 20 kids. So, and almost, I think almost 70, roughly 70. I don't know the exact number, so I've said 65, 70, but it's somewhere, somewhere between that. But the Western media tries to make this look like this was some sophisticated intelligence operation. No, it's not. You want to kill, if it's a targeted assassination, that means you kill that one person and no one else is hurt. But if you slaughter everyone in a building, that's not a targeted assassination, no matter what the BBC or CNN or Fox News or the New York Times or Breitbart or The Guardian pretend, whatever, regardless of what they say, they're just saying it for the sake of glorifying the Israeli regime and to hide and to whitewash the regime for what it's doing in Gaza. That's it, basically. And of course, in the process, they're constantly demonizing Iran. If you've noticed, for the last few weeks, left and, well, there's no left, but the liberals and the right in the United States, whether it's CNN or Fox News, everyone in their own way, Breitbart or the Washington Post, they're all demonizing Iran in their own way because they're all the war party. They have their own language. Fox News does it, they're more bombastic, and CNN pretends it's more sophisticated, but it's the same thing. So that's in order to justify death and destruction. So the Israeli regime carried out this war, and they killed a lot of senior commanders, and they were able to target air defense systems, both through missile strikes and through drones, but also through a network of collaborators that they had in Iran. Many of them were refugees or illegal immigrants or unregistered immigrants, whatever you'd like to call them, because
I wonder.
Iran hosts arguably the largest amount of foreign immigrants in the world, or the second. I'm not quite sure. It's either Iran or Pakistan. We have millions of people from Afghanistan, thanks to the dirty war the United States initiated in 1979, and they've just demolished the country. So you have millions of people here, and among them you have people who are Takfiri. You know what I'm talking about. You've been around. You've been here. You know the sort of ISIS ideology, Al Qaeda ideology, certain trends within the Taliban ideology, and so these people are easy to recruit for the Israeli regime to collaborate. And also you had Iranians too who were collaborating. But in any case, there were these collaborators who were using drones and in some cases bombs, to attack like radar sites or people or buildings and so on. So the first 2-3 days, there was the Israelis had scored some they had success on all accounts. So the successes though were there, but from the first night, the Iranians began their missile attacks, and gradually, let's say after a couple of days, the Iranians were changing the balance of the war. So the first day, the Israelis, of course, had the upper hand. It was a blitzkrieg attack. Then the Iranians were hitting the regime, and then gradually, and the new commanders were put in place, and they gradually found their footing. And so after, let's say, 2-3 days, I can't say exactly when, but after 2 or 3 days, there was a sort of balance, and then gradually the Iranians had the upper hand. And you have to keep in mind that a lot of the Israeli missiles, their warheads, or the drones, their warheads are much smaller than the Iranian missiles. And also, the Iranians were firing a lot of drones into Israel, but you're not hearing them in the Israeli media or in the Western media. So while the Iranians were firing missiles, they're also firing lots of drones, and a lot of those drones were hitting their targets. And those that weren't hitting their targets were being downed by very expensive anti-aircraft missiles or helicopters, and so it was very costly for the Israeli regime and a huge problem. But the Iranian missiles, their payloads are huge, and the devastation they cause are much greater than the missiles that the Israelis fire. So Iran began hitting the Israeli regime every day. And after a couple of days, they started using increasingly more advanced missiles, which could go right through the different layers of defense without being touched. And they are very precise. And that's why the Israelis even now won't tell us or people what has been struck, although Iran knows, because they have their own means. They have their satellite images. They have their people on the ground. Lots of Israelis have been arrested for spying for Iran, just like a lot of people here were arrested too. So as things progressed, things got worse for the regime, the Israeli regime, and they wanted Trump to come in, basically because, John, this is not about the nuclear program. This has always been about regime change. It's not like 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years. This is 45-6 years.
And they accidentally said it out loud, finally.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the good thing about the guy who I shouldn't mention, who you want your pardon from, the good thing about him is he says the quiet part out loud. But the fact is that this has always been the objective. Before the nuclear program, it was, I don't know, terrorism. It was the ballistic missile program. It was human rights. It was women's rights. It was whatever. Every it's, there are different flavors of animosity when it comes to Iran in the United States. So you could choose anything any day. One day it's this, the other day it's that. But the nuclear program is the excuse that's use now because it's an easier way to make Iran look like a threat to the world, as if like Iran is going to build a nuclear weapon and then bomb the United States, which is like thousands of nuclear warheads. But anyway,
Right.
So Trump comes in basically to save Netanyahu's neck. That's it. That's basically. Because ultimately, the damage that Trump did to the United States and to the Israelis through this attack is much greater than any damage that it did to Iran. Why? First of all, it's unclear what damage has been created. We see the
Right.
issues that are being raised in the United States, intelligence agencies, and so on. But also, apparently, Iran, from what we're hearing, had taken out all sorts of important facility, all sorts of important equipment and everything that was sensitive out of these sites before the attacks. And also, Iran has the science. Iran has the industrial infrastructure, because all of these were made in Iran. These factories that produce the centrifuges, these are Iranian factories. They're all over the country.
Yeah, I think that's something that most people don't realize.
Yeah, I mean,
these are all made domestically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, if you blow up 10 automobiles and you make automobiles, okay, well, you'll make more automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that aside, the science, the infrastructure, the removal of the sensitive equipment, the possibility that Fordo was not actually damaged in a significant way down there, all that aside, what Iran did was it said, the parliament went and passed a law. We are no longer cooperating with the International Atomic Energy Agency. You're out until we feel safe and sound, which is subjective. Do you feel safe and sound, John? Depends on what you mean by safe and sound.
Not always. That's right.
Yeah. And if, I feel safe and sound. Am I completely certain that I'm safe and sound? No. So, it's subjective. So Iran can keep out the IAEA out. And they have reason to do so, because the International Atomic Energy Agency has lied. This current head made a statement and put it, and it's Western dominated, just like all international bodies that were created after Second World War. It's dominated by the West. So the Board of Governors, the majority are Western governments. If you include Korea and Japan, they're the majority. So they can always vote against you. It doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. You're lynched if they want to lynch you. So, and the head of the body, the previous head, the WikiLeaks has released documents showing that he told the Americans, Amano, he was Japanese, that, look, you vote for me, I do whatever you say. And this guy is the same. So what he did recently to justify this war, so he has blood on his hands, was that he issued a statement saying that Iran is not in compliance. And what were the issues? Like issues that belonged to 25 years ago.
Right.
But no one's going to read the document and look at the content and say, oh my God, like, what did Iran do? Like a few grams of whatever 25 years ago, they're still having an argument over it. So he raises those issues that were basically resolved in 2015 when they had the nuclear deal. So he's reviving something that's already been, agreed upon before, at the behest of the Americans, at the behest of the Israelis, in order to justify war. So obviously, Iran is not going to let the IAEA back in anytime soon. They pass on information. They help the Americans and the Israelis attack. They give the information about scientists. These scientists were murdered, some of them, based on the information given by the IAEA. So this, I think, is key, because now Iran says, okay, we've blinded Western intelligence agents. They no longer are going to have the sort of access that they had before through this body. So it's not as if the knowledge has been taken from Iran. It's not as if Iran cannot enrich uranium. It's not as if it doesn't have the infrastructure. It's not as if they don't have the current assets that were attacked. It's not as if they've necessarily been destroyed. But Iran has now left basically the IAEA out in the cold. And everyone in Iran agrees with this.
Well, let me ask about that, if I might. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Just one final point. And that is that Trump attacked Iran to save Netanyahu's neck.
Yes.
And then even that didn't work. And if you look at what Bannon said, Steve Bannon, he said that, look, the real reason is that Israel was in serious trouble. And Trump had to, do a ceasefire.
Right.
And Trump himself said that the last 2 days were really bad for the Israeli regime.
Mhm.
So the first day when it was a blitzkrieg attack, they had the advantage. Then things changed, and then later on, the last few days, Iran was the side that had the upper hand. And this, John, the important thing is that this myth of Israeli being untouchable,
Yes.
invincible, is dead. It's
Yes.
gone.
It certainly
Forever.
seems to be. I want to ask you, if I could, about the IAEA. Iran, of course, is a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and Israel famously is not. So there are no inspections of Israeli sites. The Israelis have never even admitted to having a nuclear weapons program. Of course, everybody in the world knows that they do, but there's no international oversight of any kind. Is there any chance then, after this most recent conflict, that the Iranian government will conclude that they get nothing out of being signatories to the NPT? The IAEA is actively spying against them and providing the information to the West. Might the Iranian government withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty?
I don't think that is what they plan to do for the time being. But by passing this law in Parliament and the Guardian Council approving it, basically they've sort of done that in a way, because the body can no longer inspect Iranian installations like before.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I'm not in the government, and I'm not involved in any of these decisions. I never was, even when I was with the nuclear negotiations in 2015, and more recently in the previous administration during the negotiations in Vienna. I was just a media advisor.
Mm-hmm.
I was never the spokesperson or on the team or anything like that. I refused to be a part of that because I prefer to be, just like I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But that provides Iran, and I'm saying this just as a citizen, with the ability to do what the Israeli regime does, and that is have strategic ambiguity. That doesn't mean Iran is going to develop a nuclear weapon at all. But it
Certainly.
means that Iran can do things or not do things, and no one will know. And that is the fault of Trump. That is the doing of Netanyahu. That is the doing of the Europeans who supported the strikes. And it's really amazing, John, that when the Israelis were bombing these sites, and then the Americans were bombing these sites, hypothetically, you could have had radiation leaks.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Huge numbers of people die.
Oh, yes.
But the International Atomic Energy Agency never condemned it, and the Europeans and the Americans supported it. So they supported bombing civilian nuclear sites.
Mm-hmm.
And that is going to have consequences. One of them is the fact that the Iranians are not going to let them know what's going on in Iran anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is that, there's a consensus now about the West, John. And this, I know you have some insight about Iran through your own personal life and such, which it's not for me to explain. But in Iran, we had, during the revolution, people were very critical of the United States. And the slogan "Death to America," America was started back then. And it's a death to America doesn't have anything to do with ordinary Americans. It's an expression of hostility towards the regime in Washington, imperialism, war, death, destruction, and all that. And anyone in the United States who is sane would recognize that. But and then during the war, the United States supported Saddam Hussein. They allowed the Germans to give him chemical weapons. I survived chemical attacks. All that.
Yes.
So the generations, my generation, the generation before me, the generation after me, they were highly critical of the Americans, and they disliked the United States. The younger generation now, I would argue, is very different. And that many young people who never saw the war, they never saw the terror attacks in Iran, because these terrorists who killed so many thousands of people in Iran are based in the West as we speak, the MEK and others.
Of course.
the monarchists who stole billions of dollars when they left the country, they're based in the West. And so, older people recognize this. Younger people, they didn't see any of this. And a lot of them were influenced by this Persian media that's funded by Western intelligence agencies, Western governments, and so on. So some of them actually said, it's our fault. Let's just be friends. That
Right.
sort of thing. And those young people who thought that way were substantial in number. But what the Americans did and what the Israelis did was they created an awareness among these young people, and it really it has created the last 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks now, right? More than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
15,
A
16
little bit
days
more
now.
than 2 weeks. Right.
Yeah. The last 2 weeks has brought about a sea change in Iran. The unity that you see today in Iran is like the 1980s when Saddam invaded Iran.
Mhm.
And the hostility towards the United States and Israel, of course, is overwhelming. So if the United States thought that it had a foothold in Iran through a class of people, I don't know, parts of the middle class, parts of the younger generation, parts of the upper middle class, they've destroyed them. And so, destroyed it, John.
Yeah.
I don't mean they've just crushed it. And we saw huge crowds all across the country under bombardment, under attack, go to the streets to support the armed forces, to support the Revolutionary Guards, to support the army, to support the government. And Ayatollah Khamenei, who's always been a popular figure in Iran.
Yes.
If you look at the polls that even the Western institutions carry out, except for the fake ones where you have these MEK terrorists who have these fake, those
Right.
aside, like credible institutions, like the University of, what's it called, near Washington. It'll come. Maryland, like the University of Maryland.
Of course.
Yeah, they have polling, that sort of thing. They people can go and look at like how the views of people in any case, his popularity has gone through the roof. Because
Without
on day
doubt.
one, he came on, like when the second day of the attack, he came on television and said, "We're going to defeat." And he basically, all these generals were murdered, and then he just brought in new people, and immediately they started fighting back, and within a week, we saw that the tide had turned. So and now people say, a lot of these young people who before thought, well, it's our fault. We're too stubborn with the West. We don't, we're not lenient. We're not flexible. Now they say he was right all along. These people are just untrustworthy. So I would say that Iran today is much stronger than it was 2 weeks ago. It has won on the battlefield. It wasn't a knockout, but they won on points. Despite the U.S. involvement and despite the Blitzkrieg attack, they won. The country is united. And, John, the Israeli regime used everything that the West has.
Yeah. And that
Israel
leads
is
me.
not Ukraine. Israel is not
That's
Ukraine.
right. Yes.
The weapons that Ukraine would just dream of,
Mhm.
Israel had all of them. And so Iran was up against all the West had. And then Israel had everything. And then the Americans came in and their ships were there and their planes were there. They were trying to bring down Iranian drones and missiles and defend the Israelis. And their radar stations in Turkey and in the Persian Gulf, they were all being used to help them defensively and offensively. Jordanian airspace was all theirs. So everyone was either mobilized, NATO, regional regimes. Regional regimes were all in the American camp, or they were just in the middle doing nothing.
Yes. Trying to sit it out.
None of them were, yeah. Like Turkey does business with Netanyahu. They send Alias oil. They do trade. It's amazing what the betrayal of the Palestinian cause. How Qatar. Anyway. So the Iranians came out on top. Iran is really popular today, John.
Yes.
Really, this is Iran that for 40 some years I've been involved in media for a long time, and I'm always trying to defend Iran. I'm always trying to say, look, we're not evil. We're not as evil. We're not as evil as you say we are, but we're not. And I always believe, and I believe very deeply, that morally Iran is superior. Whatever anyone may say, I don't care. Iran, but today so many people see it that way because they see that only Iran and Yemen are standing up against this Holocaust.
And this is something that Americans and Westerners in general, I think, don't understand. I speak to a lot of people over the course of the days, the weeks. I speak to foreign diplomats and American governmental officials and journalists. I talk to people all the time, all day long. And one of the things that has consistently surprised me is this belief based on nothing that all Iran needs is a gentle push and the whole country falls apart. Because,
like a house of cards.
Like a house of cards, because it's a theocracy. It's a military dictatorship. Everybody in Iran hates its government or hates their government. And that just a little push will force the whole thing to collapse. And that is just simply not true. It's not based on anything. So I think you're exactly...
You're absolutely correct. But not only did they push, they wiped out a big segment of the leadership of the military and the Revolutionary Guards in particular. And what happened? People went to the streets, but they went to the streets in support of the government and the guards. And people under airstrikes. And when the ceasefire happened, John, people celebrated. People celebrated, but they celebrated the victory. They celebrated as a victory. But
that's right.
The only criticism that I've heard from people is, why did we stop?
Yes.
I mean,
well, the conventional wisdom is the Israelis were out of missiles. They had thrown everything that they had at Iran, and they were out.
And also, John, these missiles that Iran was hitting, they were hitting really sensitive stuff. Really, and as I said, these missiles they're coming in at this, lightning speed, and with a huge payload, they crush it. It's not like what the Israelis would do. What the Israelis would do, they'd kill some people, maybe bring down a small apartment building. The Iranian missile would destroy whatever's there. So, but the point is that, and I personally think the ceasefire. I mean, it wasn't. By the way, it's not a ceasefire. It's a cessation of hostilities.
Okay.
And the Iranians have not agreed with anyone on anything. They just agreed to stop hitting if the other side stops. And if you notice, and I'm sure you did, the last 2-3 hours, it was Iran that was hammering Israel.
Yes.
They were hammering them left and right until the last minute when the ceasefire or the cessation of hostilities was enforced. The Iranians were pounding Israel. And so so you're absolutely correct. I've heard this for years, especially these State Department people, who are particularly nasty, and these think tankers. That the regime is on the verge of collapse, and it's a house of cards, and all it needs is to push, and it's over. Okay, well, now what?
Right.
Now what? You pushed, you shoved, you fired everything you had at it, and what happened? And on Saturday, you'll see they'll have a funeral ceremony in Tehran for some of the generals. I can't bet. I'm not a betting man, but I have no doubt that you're going to see huge crowds in Tehran.
Yes, like with General Soleimani.
With General Soleimani. But the problem in the United States is the narrative is so embedded into the psyche of these sinister elites, that they'll just continue saying the same thing over and over again. They have these so-called Iran experts. Some of them have never been to Iran, and some of them are these Iranians who are basically mercenaries, and they'll say what needs to be said. And also, John, there's another thing. Iranians in the United I know a lot of Iranians in the United States, and by the way, a lot of Iranians in the United States, their views are shifting.
Oh, yes.
And across the West.
I go to a lot of events in the Washington area, a lot of Iranian events, Iranian-American events, and the shift is palpable. You can feel it just over the last few weeks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So also, and even before this, I was on Electronic Intifada. The first time, or maybe the second time I was on Electronic Intifada, and who are a bunch of fantastic people, all of them.
Yeah.
And they're different religions, but their professionalism is fantastic. Every day they begin with the news and about what happened, and then so if you really want to know what's going on in Gaza, that's the place to go.
I agree.
Day.
I have it
really
bookmarked right there on my computer.
Yeah, every day. I'm overwhelmed, but I don't have the opportunity to see it every day. But if you want to know what's going on in Gaza, that's the place to go. I mean, they're fantastic people, but their professionalism on Gaza is in my opinion second to none.
I agree.
But in any case, I was on their show maybe for the first time or the second time, and before I went, I think it was the second time, and then this was maybe a year ago, and then Ali. Or maybe Nora, I don't remember. Once someone said that tonight a lot of Iranians from California are going to be watching. And I thought like he meant they're going to be critical of me or they don't like me.
Right.
So
the rich Iranians from Beverly Hills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe I should wear a tie or something like that to look more, Western. And then he said, no, really, a lot of people, or she, I don't remember who said it, their views have shifted. The last few weeks have made, because I get email, I get messages from these, people in different parts of the country and communities, how things have changed. So Iran has become very popular across the world, the global south. And now my role, which is, and I'm a volunteer. I mean, the government, I have nothing to do with the government. A lot of people think like I'm the government spokesman, or I meet the president, or I see the leader, or I see the foreign minister. I've seen the current foreign minister once since he became the foreign minister in the last, I don't know, since this new government came.
Right.
I don't meet the leader. I don't meet the president. I'm just this is my home. This is my this is my apartment. So anyway, but in the past, I would be always defending Iran. And sometimes it would be bad, like it would be like during riots or like the green. It was the green revolution, or the woman like freedom regime change, because that's what these all are. I mean, I'm not saying that Iran is this utopian. There are no problems and everything is a conspiracy or that, but all of these things and it's very clear that in all of these things, when there are certain grievances or there are problems, the Americans come in, the Europeans come in, and they make the situation infinitely worse.
Yes.
So something that would be solved in a few hours, they try to turn it into a national crisis. And then they have this media apparatus that tries to provoke young Iranians and bring them to the streets, and they encourage violence. And for example, in the women like freedom thing, 70 some police officers and enforcers of the law, they were killed. And I mean, imagine if the United States, you had carrying the population, if you proportion, I mean, it would, let's say times 4.5, let's say 300 or so police officers were killed, let's say in a few weeks. That's what it would be like.
Right.
So, I'd go on media and I try to explain what's going on in Iran, not from the perspective of Western media and think tanks, but as an Iranian sympathetic to Iran and saying, look, it's not like you say it is. People are not the majority of people are not happy with these riots. The majority of people do not want the Islamic Republic of Iran to go away. The majority of people see it as the legitimate state.
Mm-hmm.
And, but they, it's just, that house of cards theory. And often they don't really, they don't recognize the reality in Iran. That if you come to Iran and get in a taxi, I was just saying this an hour ago to someone in another program, that if you come to Iran and get in a taxi, people are going to say bad things all the time. We Iranians don't sit around praising the government. Me and my friends or my relatives or my wife or my parents or my children, we don't say, yes, wow, what a great, metro we have, or like, what a great, public services, or no, we always, even if it's good, we'll say, well, that part of it sure wasn't good. Or so we are critical, very critical. I think in a sense, like I compare Iran with the UK often, how the British are always sort of, they're they're sort of like that too in a way.
Yeah, they complain about
But
everything.
yeah, exactly. And but that doesn't mean that these people want to overthrow the
No,
Islamic Republic. The same
no.
people who go to General Soleimani's funeral in the millions are the guys in the taxi and the shops and so on who are saying what a lousy country this is.
Yes.
So they misread the situation based upon their self-interest, based upon their wishful thinking.
Well,
And
let me
so
ask you about that. Donald
yeah,
Trump said just a few days ago, in the midst of this exchange of missiles, that what he essentially did was he threatened to murder Ayatollah Khamenei, and said that we'll let him live for now, or something to that effect. What was the response to that among Iranians, the average Iranian, the man on the street, for the president of the United States to threaten the life of a world leader?
well, first of all, in the West, no one said anything.
No,
No major media outlet was outraged, even those
no.
that hate Trump. So when it comes to Iran, it doesn't matter if it's Breitbart or the New York Times or if it's CNN or Fox News. They'll all hammer Iran and demonize it in their own way. And the Europeans, of course, are no better. But in Iran, people were outraged. And it's amazing, John. People would contact me because they thought like I have some influence, and I don't. I mean, I wish I had influence. This is, right now I'm speaking to you with my cell phone, and if during these 2 weeks of war, I had to go to like Press TV, an evacuated building. I was the only guy sitting in the building that was evacuated because they were afraid it would be bombed because it had internet. So I'd be sitting there, and it wasn't very good during the first couple of days. So I'd be sitting in an evacuated building that could be bombed, doing interviews. If I was so influential, at least they could have given me some, my own decent internet connection, then so I wouldn't have to do that. But anyway, the very fact that it allowed me into that building was an achievement. But so many people would contact me, people who you would be, who weren't even political, or who would never even who'd never contacted me before, and said, please, they have to take him, they have to put him somewhere safe, and like it's not, it's not the sort of person who I ever think would contact me for anything.
Right.
I don't know if you would know it. So, I mean, it's clear as day. But I think I don't. If anyone just looks what happened, people under airstrikes across the country this Friday, the last Friday, 6 days ago, right? They went to the streets while airstrikes were being carried out in huge numbers in all the cities, in defense of the country, in defense of the leader, in defense of the armed forces.
Yep, that's
Where do you
exactly
see
right.
such a thing? And it's a lot of it is because of, and the region pretty well, quite well, in fact. A lot of it is because of, well, Iran is an ancient civilization, of course, but a part of it is Iran's religious culture. And the grandson of the Prophet, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, he, in Karbala, he was martyred when he refused to accept humiliation and submit to the despot.
Yes.
And he said, and a famous slogan was, Hayhat min nadillah, never to humiliation, which right now we're in those days. Today is the beginning of Haram, and then 9 days from now we have Tasu'a and then Ashura, where on Ashura he's martyred, and then his sister, so it's Imam Hussein and his sister, the daughter of the Prophet, who stood up against these despots and in defense of the disenfranchised and the oppressed, and so. And what they did on that day is very, very much a part of Iran's culture. Even secular people, when it's Ashura, they participate in the ceremonies and the programs. So this defiance, this resistance, the axis of resistance, this culture of resistance is very much embedded in the culture. And the reason why Iran or Yemen or Hezbollah are so steadfast in defending the Palestinians, because Hezbollah made huge sacrifices to draw away the Israeli armed forces from Gaza. In other words, they sacrificed themselves for another people. Yemen did the same. The Iranians did the same. A lot of this comes from that culture of from the story of Karbala. So you have this very powerful idea, part of the broader ideology of people in the country, the part of, deeply embedded in the culture of resistance and of being steadfast. And that's why you see that under this, simultaneously, the Israelis with the United States, supported by the collective West, the region is either indifferent or conspiring in one form or another. Despite all that, they're steadfast, and not for a moment, John, not for a moment did I see anyone say Iran's going to be defeated.
Mohammed, I think that is something that most Westerners, almost all Americans, just simply don't understand. It's just a fundamental misunderstanding of Iran, Iran's history, Iran's culture, and Iran's people.
I agree completely. And they don't have to believe anything that I say. They can say, well, he's just talking propaganda. Look at the facts on the ground. You had, and look at what the Western media was saying. Israel is destroying Iran. Israel is doing this. They're so sophisticated. They're hammering Iran. They have air superiority. Iran is on the ropes. Who asked for the ceasefire?
Right.
Who came to the aid of whom?
Good point.
And who, it's like in boxing, who in the last round was, I don't watch boxing. The last time I saw a boxing match was Muhammad Ali in the 1970s.
Right.
But who was hammering who until the very last moment?
Yeah.
And this is something that the West, if they don't come to terms with, is going to cause further miscalculation. And so I think that what happened is a big nail has, this has, what do you call it? Another nail, but a big nail has gone right into the coffin of the Israeli regime. I'm not saying it's going to collapse tomorrow, next week, or next month, or next year. But the last 21 months have been all downhill for the regime. Now the West likes to say they won here, they won there, they destroyed Hezbollah, they destroyed Hamas. No, they didn't.
No.
And if Hezbollah was weakened, so were they. If Hamas was weakened, so were they. But the Israeli regime has been exposed for being genocidal and monstrous, and now this myth of its invincibility and its being untouchable, it's gone.
It is.
So I think that Netanyahu has done more. Now Trump, the guy who wants to give you a pardon, says that he was the greatest prime minister in the Israeli history. I think that Netanyahu has done more to destroy Israel than any leader.
I agree strongly. I agree strongly. Well, Mohammad Marandi, always such a treat and a pleasure to have you. It's good to see you smiling, and thank you for those insights. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and I hope to see you at some point.
I look forward to it very much. And ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It's the only way that we can continue to bring great minds like Mohammad Marandi to you on a regular basis. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us. I'm John Kiriakou. This has been Deep Focus. Till next time.